They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible for this as I am. She should have stopped him.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
What happens when love, jealousy, and obsession collide just days before Christmas? In Phoenix, Arizona, a tragic story unfolded that shocked the community and left a family broken forever. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into a case that investigators described as a deadly love triangle, one that ended with more than 24 shots fired, a devoted father killed, and a mother-to-be left trembling in the aftermath. On the surface, 35-year-old Keshawn Stewart's life looked full of promise. He was a father, a man with deep ties to his family, and someone friends described as loyal and protective. Just before the holidays in 2024, he was looking forward to building a future with his girlfriend, who was 3 months pregnant with his child. But behind that picture of new beginnings was another relationship that refused to let go. Stewart had ended a long-term relationship with 33-year-old Kalita Williams only weeks earlier, but their history was complicated. Court documents later revealed that unresolved disputes and raw emotions were still simmering. By December 23rd, what seemed like a step toward a brighter future would instead unravel in violence. A quiet neighborhood near 17th Avenue in Maryland would be shaken by gunfire. Neighbors would flood 911 with panicked calls, and a family preparing for the holidays would be left facing unthinkable loss. What looked like the promise of love and renewal was about to shatter. It was just after 5 o'clock in the evening on December 23, 2024, when Phoenix police dispatchers began receiving a flood of 911 calls. Neighbors near 17th Avenue in Maryland reported the same terrifying sound, rapid bursts of gunfire tearing through the air. One caller shouted over the phone, "It's like a machine gun, at least 20 shots." Others described seeing a black car riddled with bullets, its windows blown out, and a woman screaming for help. When officers arrived, they were met with a scene that looked like a war zone. The vehicle had crashed after being sprayed with more than 24 rounds. Inside was 35-year-old Keshawn Stewart, slumped over in the driver's seat, suffering from a devastating gunshot wound. Beside him was his girlfriend, 3 months pregnant, and was crying and clutching her stomach as she begged first responders to save him. Phoenix fire paramedics rushed Stewart to a nearby hospital, but even in those first moments, officers could see how dire his condition was. The pregnant woman, trembling and covered in shattered glass, told police through tears that they had been trying to leave when the shooter opened fire. Officers began canvassing the area. Shell casings littered the ground near the apartment complex where the shots were fired. Witnesses confirmed hearing a heated argument before the gunfire erupted. Early reports suggested a domestic dispute, but the sheer firepower, an AK-47-style rifle used at close range, immediately raised questions. This was not a spontaneous burst of anger. It looked deliberate. Investigators noted one unusual detail right away. The suspected shooter had not fled the scene. Instead, he was spotted still on the property, calm and waiting. That strange behavior set the tone for what detectives would soon uncover, that this crime wasn't only about rage, but about obsession and control. To understand the weight of this tragedy, you have to know who Keshawn Stewart was before that December night. Friends and family described Keshawn as loyal, protective, and deeply committed to the people he loved. He was a father, already raising children from previous relationships, and those close to him said fatherhood was central to his life. According to court records and local reporting, Stewart had been preparing for another child with his new girlfriend, a relationship that was giving him fresh hope for stability and family life. Community members in Phoenix who knew Stewart spoke of his easygoing personality, the kind of person who could make others laugh and who valued trust above everything. He had grown up in Texas before making Arizona his home, and he carried with him a reputation as someone dependable, someone who showed up when needed. But as detectives would later learn, not all of Stewart's personal life matched the image of calm and stability. His 6-year relationship with Kalita Williams had been rocky, filled with breakups, reconciliations, and heated disputes. By October 2024, Stewart had ended it for good, but even after the separation, Williams's presence lingered. Phone calls, messages, and arguments over shared possessions, including a car Williams had been making payments on, kept pulling Stewart back into contact with his former partner. To those outside his private life, Stewart seemed to be moving forward. New relationship, a baby on the way, and plans for a more stable future. But beneath that progress was a storm still brewing. And this wasn't just hindsight from investigators. Friends would later admit they had worried. Stewart's decision to visit Williams's apartment on December 23rd to resolve the dispute over the car felt risky. Even before the gunfire, there was a sense that danger might be waiting on the other side of that door. Keshawn Stewart's story didn't begin in Phoenix. Born in 1989, he grew up in Texas, surrounded by family values that emphasized loyalty and responsibility. Relatives described him as someone who stepped into the role of protector early on, the kind of son and brother who always looked out for others. That sense of duty only deepened when he became a father. By his early 20s, Stewart was already raising children. Friends say fatherhood wasn't something he ran from. Instead, it grounded him. He worked to provide, juggling jobs while still finding time to be present. Whether it was school events, homework, or just weekend afternoons together, Stewart took pride in being the kind of dad his children could count on. Those who knew him remember his humor, his easy smile, and the way he lit up rooms with conversation. He was social, but also deeply loyal to a close circle of family and friends. In Phoenix, where he eventually built his life, Stewart earned a reputation as someone who kept his word. People leaned on him, and he embraced that role. He wasn't without challenges. Relationships tested him, and as investigators would later reveal, his 6-year partnership with Khalid Williams was often stormy. But Stewart was also resilient. By the fall of 2024, he had made the difficult choice to leave that relationship behind. According to court records cited in local news reports, he wanted something healthier, a chance at renewal. That renewal came quickly. Stewart began seeing a woman who soon became central to his hopes for the future. Their relationship blossomed, and when she discovered she was pregnant, Stewart confided to those close to him that it felt like a second chance, a chance to rebuild the family life he always wanted. In the weeks leading up to Christmas, Stewart was excited about becoming a father again. His girlfriend later told the court he spoke often about the baby, imagining a future filled with stability and love. It's these glimpses, the man laughing with friends, the father proudly raising his children, the partner excited for new life, that remind us what was lost. Stewart's murder was not just the headline of a love triangle gone wrong. It was the silencing of a man whose values were rooted in family, loyalty, and hope. When gunfire ended his life on December 23, 2024, it also took from his children a father who had been their role model, and from his community, a man many had admired for his strength and care. When detectives first arrived at 17th Avenue in Maryland, the case didn't look like a mystery. Witnesses pointed to a heated argument, a spray of bullets, and a suspect still present at the scene. 33-year-old Khalid Williams was taken into custody that same evening, standing outside the apartment complex with the AK-47-style rifle nearby. But police investigations rarely move in straight lines. In the first 48 hours, detectives had to consider every possibility. Was this truly a domestic dispute that exploded into gunfire, or could there have been another hand in the violence? The presence of Stewart's pregnant girlfriend raised immediate questions. She had survived the attack and told officers they had gone to Williams' apartment to resolve a dispute over a car, a vehicle Stewart owned but Williams had been making payments on. She insisted they were leaving when the shots rang out. Detectives recorded her account carefully, but standard procedure meant they had to weigh her role too. At the hospital, the woman repeated her story to investigators and later to a judge. Tearfully, she explained how bullets struck Stewart, causing the car to crash. She described holding him as he collapsed onto her stomach, fearing not only for his life, but for the unborn child she carried. "My son will never know his father," she said in court, a statement that left the room silent. Williams, meanwhile, presented his own version. According to court documents cited by AZ Family, he claimed Stewart and the woman had threatened him. He told the judge, "They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible as I am." Despite his attorney's advice to remain silent, Williams insisted on speaking, deflecting blame even in his first appearance.
They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible for this as I am. She should have stopped him.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
For detectives, this contrast, the girlfriend's consistent account of terror versus Williams's calm attempt to rationalize the shooting, began to narrow their focus. Still, the investigation wasn't closed. Officers reviewed calls, text messages, and statements from neighbors. They needed to know if anyone else might have influenced the events that night. And so, while the main suspect sat in jail, the search for truth continued. As detectives pieced together the days leading up to the shooting, a clear picture began to form. The motive wasn't random. It was rooted in heartbreak, jealousy, and a toxic inability to let go. For 6 years, Keshawn Stewart and Khalid Williams had been in a relationship described by friends as rocky and full of volatility. By October 2024, Stewart had finally walked away. He wanted peace, and he found it quickly in a new relationship that offered something different: stability, family, and the excitement of fatherhood again. When Williams learned that Stewart's girlfriend was pregnant, investigators say his emotions spiraled. What might have been an ordinary breakup turned into a wound that Williams could not accept. Prosecutors would later describe his mindset as one of obsession, an inability to move on from a partner who had chosen a new path. Court records reveal the arguments didn't stop after the breakup. There were disputes over possessions, including the car Stewart owned but Williams had been paying on. That car became a flashpoint, a reminder that their lives were still entangled. Detectives say that was the reason Stewart and his girlfriend went to Williams' apartment on December 23rd. Neighbors told police they heard shouting before the gunfire. Investigators believe the fight escalated when Stewart refused to reconcile, and when Williams realized his former partner's life was moving forward without him. The contradictions in Williams' own words told detectives just how deep the resentment ran. In court, he claimed Stewart and his girlfriend were threatening him. But prosecutors pointed to the number of rounds fired, more than 25 shots from an AK-47-style rifle, as evidence this was not self-defense. This was rage unleashed. The motive was now unmistakable: jealousy, betrayal, and control. Williams wasn't just angry that Stewart had left. He was enraged that Stewart had found happiness again, a happiness that no longer included him. And it was in that moment, with his former partner preparing for a new child and new life, that Williams snapped. December 23, 2024. As the holiday lights glowed across Phoenix, Keshawn Stewart and his pregnant girlfriend pulled up to the apartment complex near 17th Avenue and Maryland. The plan, according to investigators, was to resolve a dispute over a car. Tensions were high, but no one could have predicted just how deadly the encounter would become. Inside the apartment, voices rose. Neighbors later told officers they heard an argument break out, loud enough to carry through the walls. Stewart and his girlfriend decided to leave, hoping to de-escalate the situation. They returned to their black vehicle and started the engine. But as they prepared to drive away, the confrontation exploded. Court records state that 33-year-old Khalid Williams emerged armed with an AK-47-style rifle. What happened next was chaos. Williams unleashed more than 24 rounds into the car. Shell casings scattered across the pavement as glass shattered and bullets tore through the vehicle. One round struck Stewart in the head. His girlfriend, only 3 months pregnant, screamed as the car lost control and crashed. In her later statement to the court, she recalled holding him as he slumped forward onto her stomach, whispering through tears that her unborn son would never know his father. The brutality was shocking. Investigators noted the volume of firepower was far beyond what anyone could claim as self-defense. More than 25 rounds fired, all directed at 2 unarmed people trying to leave. And yet, there was no cover-up in the traditional sense. Williams didn't run, didn't hide the weapon, didn't attempt an alibi. Instead, he waited calmly outside the complex. When officers arrived minutes later, they found him standing there as if resigned to arrest. The AK-47 was recovered nearby, still warm from the barrage. That calm demeanor, contrasted with the devastation left behind, sent a chilling message. This wasn't a crime of passion that burned hot and faded. It was a deliberate act of violence, carried out without hesitation, and with nothing to disguise it. In many homicide cases, investigators spend weeks chasing leads before making an arrest. But in this case, the breakthrough came almost immediately because the suspect never left. When Phoenix officers arrived at the apartment complex on December 23rd, neighbors were still shaken from the sound of rapid gunfire. Shell casings littered the ground, glass was everywhere, and Stewart's vehicle sat riddled with bullet holes. Amid the chaos, officers noticed something startling. The shooter was still there. Standing outside the building was 33-year-old Khalid Williams. According to police, he showed no signs of panic. He didn't run, didn't fight. Instead, he calmly raised his hands and allowed officers to place him in handcuffs. The AK-47-style rifle was recovered nearby. At first, detectives had to verify what witnesses and the surviving victim were saying. Was this truly the man who opened fire? The evidence quickly confirmed it. More than 24 spent casings matched the weapon recovered at the scene. Stewart's girlfriend gave a detailed account of the argument, the attempted escape, and the hail of bullets that followed. Neighbors backed her story, reporting that Williams had been shouting just moments before the shooting began. 3 days later, on December 26th, Williams was formally booked into jail. According to AZ Family, prosecutors charged him with first-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm by a prohibited person. Court documents also revealed his criminal history. Williams was a convicted felon who was not allowed to have a gun at all. The arrest may have been straightforward, but it was also chilling. Williams' calm surrender suggested not shock, but certainty, as if he had already accepted the consequences of what he had done. 4 days after the shooting, Khalid Williams made his first court appearance. In that small Phoenix courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. The pregnant girlfriend of Keshawn Stewart spoke directly to the judge, her voice shaking as she described the horror of that night. "While we were leaving and he was shooting at us, one of the bullets hit my boyfriend in the back of the head. He landed on my belly and I held him. I wake up screaming every night. My son will never know his father." Her words silenced the room. Williams, despite his attorney's advice to remain quiet, insisted on speaking.
They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible for this as I am. She should have stopped him.
I tried.
No, you didn't.
He told the judge, "They were warned not to come to my home. They were threatening to harm me. She's just as much responsible as I am." Instead of remorse, his statements placed blame on the very woman who had survived the attack. Prosecutors asked for a $1.5 million cash-only bond. The judge ultimately set it at $1 million, citing the seriousness of the crime and Williams' status as a prohibited possessor of a firearm. For Stewart's family, the hearing was only the beginning of a long path toward justice. Community leaders used the tragedy as a warning about the dangers of toxic, controlling relationships and the importance of recognizing red flags before they escalate to violence. The trial is pending, but the charges are severe: first-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and unlawful possession of a weapon. If convicted, Williams faces the possibility of life behind bars. Keshawn Stewart's story is more than just a headline. It is the story of a father, a partner, and a man whose future was stolen in a storm of jealousy and violence. His children lost a role model, his girlfriend lost the man she loved, and an unborn child lost the chance to ever know his father. Cases like this force us to ask difficult questions. When relationships turn toxic, how do we recognize the signs before tragedy strikes? And how can communities do more to protect those at risk? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please share in the comments below. And if you found this story impactful, subscribe to the channel and help us reach 1,000 subscribers. Together, we can keep these stories alive and honor the victims who should never be forgotten.